In his tell-all book, SNAFU, The Strange Story of the American Airship, Vice Admiral Charles E. Rosendahl revealed how the attack on Pearl Harbor could have been prevented by a single American airship.
Since the ships were intended as rigid airship fleet scouts, we wanted to develop everything we could to facilitate our operations with the fleet. We set up a 5-year aircraft building program, of which one part was the provision for 2 large rigid airships of about 6 million cubic feet capacity each to serve as adjuncts to the fleet. Those became the ZRS-4 and the ZRS-5, and in turn were named the Akron and the Macon. That was the beginning of our modern rigid airship program.
Pearl Harbor was nonetheless a bitter pill to take, and one our Navy should seemingly have gone to great length to avoid. Whether official Washington kept our Pearl Harbor military leaders adequately informed will be debated and discussed for many years to come. There will always be varying opinions as to our faults and deficiencies out there in the Pacific that fateful day. But there is one thing that is crystal clear. The awful losses we suffered might have been at least mitigated had we possessed and utilized an effective long-range service of information at sea. Call it scouting, patrol, or whatever you like. The fact is that such a service might have even deflected the raid altogether and without having to fire a single shot. Here is the situation. The orders under which Nagumo operated have been recently revealed by Walter Lloyd in his book, Day of Infamy. If Nagumo's task force was sighted by us at any time on or before December 5th, Nagumo was to abandon the strike and turn back. In that case, his sortie would probably have been alibied as simply a cruising exercise. Were he to be sighted on the 6th, he was to use his own judgment as to whether to continue on. But beginning with the 7th, regardless of whether or not his force had been sighted, Nagumo was to proceed with the attack. Lady Luck smiled on Nagumo. His route over the Pacific was well to the northward of usually traveled shipping lanes. During his entire 12-day journey, he was unseen. He was not even suspected, as a matter of fact. On the 10th day, he was within 1,000 miles of Hawaii. This was a distance within the scouting ability of a rigid airship such as we could have had at that time. Had Nagumo's force been sighted that day, or before, just by one airship, or even by one plane from an airship, the attack on Pearl Harbor would not have come about. Had such a sighting of his force occurred on the next day, December 6th, Nagumo's orders permitted him to turn back, and we know now of Nagumo's basic lack of confidence in the success of his task. To speculate further, suppose Nagumo had been discovered on the 6th and had nevertheless decided to go ahead. Or, suppose the sighting had not occurred until the dawn patrol of the 7th of December. The prospects for success in Nagumo's mission would have been greatly impaired, to say the least. For such timely information, no cost to us in scouts, one airship or several, or together with radar, planes, and all, would have been too great. An off-duty Army operator at a shore radar did observe and try to report what turned out to be the approaching Japanese aircraft, but his information was lightly brushed aside. However, a contact report from a scout at sea would have unquestionably brought in immediate action. It may be argued that Nagumo's task force would have sent out planes to shoot down any airships that came into sight. That is such a justified or foregone conclusion I strenuously dispute. Up to December 5th, at least, Nagumo had either to stay undetected or give up his mission. A sizable force of men of war such as his was not exactly a needle in a haystack. If he saw an airship, he could be certain he had in turn been seen and reported by the airship. A contact report need not be lengthy radio transmission, and the chances are good that, even if attacked, the airship could get its message off. Remember also, we were not at war with Japan. Would Nagumo have considered the kill of an airship or two sufficient incentive to risk opening hostilities then and there? It is more than doubtful. So to me, It does not seem at all out of order to speculate on what airships might have contributed in those crucial days. In the same vein of speculation, one might ponder how differently Japan might have looked upon a raid on Pearl Harbor, knowing we possessed and used effective long-range airship scouts. Nagumo's chief of staff was a rear admiral who, in his earlier days, had served in his Navy's airship branch. When we analyze this picture, then, it is really hard to see why, with more than 8 years' realization of the probable need, we were caught without a long-range electronic burglar alarm capable of intercepting and warning of such a Japanese move. Everyone knew trouble was coming. In May 1940, the President had ordered the fleet to remain in Hawaiian waters indefinitely. The next month, he upgraded the limited national emergency, in which we had been in since September 1939, to a full-grown national emergency. Apparently, flying boats or other airplanes couldn't yet fill the gap on our long-range patrol needs. But airships could have, and I say this despite the loss of the Akron and the Macon. From then and from the Hindenburg, we could have easily extrapolated successful rigid airship scouts by mid-1941.